It has been a while since I have done a planner update, and I've been going back and forth on whether I wanted to make like a overall journal and planner ecosystem update or if I just want to focus on the planning and tracking side of things because as you can see here, I have quite a few books. So these are the books that I am frequently using. I have some other traveler's notebooks that I don't use as frequently, but these are the ones that I'm in throughout the week. So I think I'm going to start with the planner side of things, and then depending on how we're doing timing wise, I might go into these books over here, but I might break that out into a separate video. So let's get into it. Before I go through this stack, I want to invite you to settle in because it is going to be a chatty video, and grab yourself something to drink, maybe a snack, and something to keep you company and help you feel cozy while we hang out and chat. Today I have a coffee, so it is my second coffee of the day. Probably not recommended, but I was in the mood. So as I drink my coffee, I might start talking faster. And for my snack, I've got a couple of arrowroot biscuits or arrowroot cookies. And in my conversations with Leanne for our Artist Way chats, I showed her these cookies and I realized that I think these are probably Canadian. And I learned that they're called arrowroot because there's arrowroot flour in them. I really like to dip these in coffee or tea. So I'm going to move this stack aside. Okay, so let's go through the planner first. So I have my planner in my A6 portfolio. It's a collaboration between Wonder Pens, which is a Toronto-based stationery retailer, and the Superior Labor, which is one of my favorite stationery brands. And you can see it's starting to get nice and patinaed. So I've learned that it requires a lot of patience to get the natural leather to patina. I believe one day it'll probably be kind of close to this beautiful brown. And then this brown is probably going to get closer to a dark brown. So loving this portfolio. And on the inside, I have my A6 Hobonichi. I have my weekly supplement. And I also learned over time that the regular capless or vanishing point fits inside here. So I think in previous videos I had my Decimo in here because it was a thinner pen, but this is my favorite capless retractable pen and it's the one that I want to reach for and use all the time. So I just decided to try it and I was quite happy to see that it fits very comfortably inside this portfolio. Before I do my flip through of these two books, I think the first thing that I really want to say is that nothing has changed. So this is going to be a very realistic look at how I've been using these books. And it might be a little bit boring because I haven't really had the energy or the desire to change anything about how I've been using these books. And I'm starting to think that boring is better just because I've had a lot of things going on and I just find it easier to be able to rely on this book in the way that I've set it up. So we'll go through it. There'll be empty pages, there'll be half-filled pages, but this is really the way I've been using it. And honestly, 6 months into the year, I'm still really loving this setup. So we'll start with the weekly supplement. And I might as well start at the beginning of the year because I already went through and censored all of the names. But you'll see a progression here. So at the beginning of the year, there was some motivation to decorate all of the white space in here. And I had a lot of fun using different color coding and out. So what I normally do is anything that feels memorable or certain meetings that I have, I will write it in marker, and then after it happens, I'll outline it. And that's my way of being able to tell like what actually happened. So if it doesn't end up happening because I wrote it out in marker, I can just scribble over it, and it, in a way, it erases it. So that's basically what I've done. On the side, I usually write down any events that I want to remember by the time I get to setting up my week. I'll record down exercise that I do, so runs and strength training, and then any kind of big-ish task or event that I want to remember, especially if this is something that I want to expand on in my memory keeping, which happens in this TN. So, yeah, this is kind of the first place that I refer to when I'm trying to remember what happened. And yeah, I really like how this turned out because I can see, when I'm setting up my week, all of the little squares are meetings and events that I need to remember. So that's really helpful. But then when I'm looking back on this, I like it because I can see all of the big events that I really want to remember. Like on February 1st, we got a new couch, which was a really big deal because our old couch was really falling apart and we'd been kind of desperate to get a new couch. So, I actually can't believe it was that long ago now that I'm looking back. And I also met Tiffany from Talksmot this weekend, and it was just such a fun, memorable hangout. So I love being able to just see some of the things I want to remember at a glance. And then you'll see in maybe a later video when I do my flip through of my memory keeper, I was able to expand on this event in my memory keeper. So yeah, this is how the year has been looking. And this is something that gets updated on a daily basis. So this is always open on my desk. And I love how small it is. So it really doesn't take up a lot of room. And it's really helpful for me to remember when my meetings are. Because yes, I do have all my meetings in my digital calendar. But I don't know. Maybe it's an ADHD accommodation, but I always need to be looking and reminding myself of when I have upcoming meetings. So I just find it really helpful to glance at this throughout the day and keep track of what I need to remember. And as you can see, the decoration starts to get sparse. And I think that really comes down to the fact that I honestly just had a lot going on and I didn't have as much time to dedicate to decorating this, which I think is okay. It really is a functional piece for me. And because I like to put this in my A6 portfolio and put it in my purse sometimes, I'm really sensitive about not bulking these two books up so that they can still fit comfortably in my purse. So you can see here, less stickers. Up here, what I usually do is if I have a birthday that I want to remember, I will just put a little sticker, and I have a set of cakes and other sweets that I've been using this year. And as you can see here, I'm not even outlining events as they happen anymore. So what was going on here was I started the week strong, had all my events, and then usually I'm not in this book over the weekends because this is very much a Monday to Friday work type of calendar for me. And so I've been adding in some of the events retroactively, like I've been back feeling this just so that I have some source of truth that I can refer to when I'm filling out some of my other memory keeping books. So, and this was last week where I did not do any outlining at all, but all of these things happened and it's still helpful to me. So if I have a moment where I want to take a quick break, sometimes I'll go back and I'll outline the events, but also I don't make myself do that because it's not really something that I need to look pretty. I just need it to be functional. And I've also started to play around with not even having the marker, because sometimes if this is all I have and I don't have a marker on me, then it might stop me from adding in events. So I've just been using my pen. So that's this book. And something that I find to be helpful is I white out the original timeline. So the original timeline allocates 1 square per hour. And I find that because I have so many half-an-hour meetings or meetings that start at the half-hour mark, I find it much more usable when I have 2 boxes dedicated to 1 hour. So I ended up whiting out all of the original timeline. And then I've just written out, I start at 8 a.m. and then I go all the way down to 8 p.m. And it doesn't take that long to do. I think when I first got this book, I took a few days, if I needed a break from work, I would just white out a few at a time. Now I'm a little bit behind on updating adding in the new timeline. So I'll just do like a few weeks at a time, and it's not a huge deal because the main thing is if I have a future event, I will add it to the side here and the time it is. And then when I get around to setting up my week, then I will need the timing at that point, but I don't need it until I'm actually in the week, if that makes sense. So that's my weekly supplement. If you've watched any of my other videos, you will know that this hasn't changed at all. And I'm sure there are more exciting ways to use this, and I probably could experiment, but it's honestly working really great for me. And I can't say I love it. In fact, I think maybe it's almost a little bit boring. But again, I think something that I'm coming to terms with is that planning is kind of boring. And planning isn't really a hobby for me. I think it's more of a necessity because of the way I operate and the way I am so forgetful and I need constant reminders to do things. And I really find it helpful to have this visual idea of how my day is going to go, because if I have a lot of meetings on a certain day, then that is a visual signal to me that I'm probably not going to get a lot of deep focus work done. And I used to write down my appointments in something like the Hobonichi weeks on the side here, and I know that works for a lot of people, but I think visually for me, I just need that time blocking, and that is an accommodation that I've made for myself and that I've learned throughout the years is helpful for me to stay on track and get things done. But I do think that is a function of my ADHD, and I'm actually quite happy that I discovered that, because I know that whatever planner I use, I need to have this kind of vertical timeline, and I have noticed over the years that I'm much more on top of things when I plan in this way, or when I can see my schedule in this way. So that's the weekly supplement. Now I will take you through my Hobonichi original. So I have done a few flip throughs of this, but I did go through and I've prepared all the pages. I believe I've censored everything out just to give you a realistic view of this very messy planner that is by no means aesthetically pleasing, but it has been my brain this year. I'm really happy with this book. And okay, so let me just get into it. So I haven't really used these pages. I think in the past I've used this as an index. So I would go through these pages and I would note down important dates that I want to remember. I'll probably do that as well because I've had a variety of doctor's appointments and things like that where I've written down different things that I would want to remember in the future. So I think instead of having something written down for every day, at a certain point, I'll probably go through my pages and I'll just pick out the days that have important information that I can see myself referring back to. So for example, when we went to the vet, we got we did some testing on coconut, and when the vet called back and shared the results, I would write them down on the side of these pages. That's something that I would want to reference in the future. So I would probably put like coconut vet results or coconut testing results, something like that. I find that when I'm in the year, I don't really need the index so much because I'm more aware of kind of when things happened. But I think if I'm returning to this book, I will appreciate having this index sorted out. So that's something that I'll do, I think, later on. In the monthlies, I kind of use this as an ink log of some sort. So if I get a bottle of ink or if I get some samples, this is usually the place that I will note them down. And I just think it's fun to kind of flip through it at the end of the year and, to be able to see all the different inks that kind of represent that year. So I did this in my A6 last year. Let me grab that. This is my A6 from last year. And I did something very similar I guess I decorated it a little more, but I did something similar with inks, and I'm really happy with it. And I actually use this calendar often to reference, like, at the end of last year, I did an ink vent, a sample ink vent, and I've been slowly using some of these ink samples because I kind of associate inks that I receive with a certain year. Then I find it really helpful to have this kind of reference. So I've been continuing that with this. I'm quite pleased with it. So that's my monthly calendar. I just find these squares are quite small, so I don't think they would really be useful as writing down events, especially because I just find this weekly view much more helpful to me when I'm planning out events. And because events are always changing so quickly, I find the weekly is a little more agile, whereas if I put them in my monthly, then things are always changing, and then it then gets hard for me to actually see what's going on. So I just find using it for something a little more unrelated to planning is helpful for me. So that's my monthlies. And then for my dailies, so I really use this as like a mix of everything. So it's really like a scratch pad, it's a to-do list, and it's little notes to myself. On January 1st, I did a currently inked, which I like to do from time to time just to see what I'm using, what inks I'm using. Blank pages. I did a couple of marker swatches because I was curious how this paper would hold up to these different markers, and it seems like it was okay. And then this is very much the layout. Again, you will see it really hasn't changed 6 months later, but I always start my day by writing out the meetings that I have because it's just an extra it just forces me to check my schedule again, because I'm very prone to forgetting about meetings. Yeah, I'm very prone to forgetting about meetings. And what happens too often is I will maybe forget I have a meeting. I'll go have lunch in between a meeting, and then I'll get an electronic notification that will tell me that I have a meeting in 10 minutes. So I just find that this is a nice way for me to just double check again and again and really reinforce how much time I have, because I do struggle with time blindness. And this is one of the ways that I have been able to accommodate that for myself. So I do my meetings, and then I will do my to-do list. And I really love how there's so much space that if my to-do list gets really long, as it can, then I have all this extra room here to continue adding to it. And if it doesn't, then I can use up the space to write ink thoughts or test out inks, that kind of thing. And I use kind of a bullet journal style here, where I put a task. If it needs to get done, it'll be a circle outline. And then when I finish it, I will color it in. And if I don't finish it, I will add an arrow to remind myself to move it to the next day. And I know that some people would find it repetitive and annoying to have to write the same task over and over again. I know there's a lot of people who will use that Alistair method, where they'll only write it out the one time, and they'll have the days of the week, and you can kind of slot it in for that week. I see a lot of appeal to that, and I have tried a version of that in one of my other hobinichis for chores. But when it comes to some of these tasks, I just find, for me personally, writing them out repeatedly, again, in a way, kind of really forces me to either make sure it happens or examine why I'm not getting it done. Because if I'm constantly pushing it off, that could be a signal that maybe it's not something I want to be doing, or maybe it's not something that is super urgent. So as annoying as it can be to kind of say I put book vet appointment, if I'm constantly putting book vet appointment for 7 days, well, that is annoying, but also I should just do it. So I really like doing this. And again, it's going to differ by the person, but I find that writing things down really sets that intention. And especially when I find myself not wanting to make my to-do list is usually when I need to do it the most. It's usually when I'm fighting with myself and I'm thinking, oh, I just don't want to do this. And once I let loose and I get rid of the structure, then I find chaos happens and nothing gets done. I do think it's okay to take breaks from time to time, but for me, this has always been the method that ensures that I actually do things. So you will see here, I'll just kind of do a quick flip through. This really doesn't change much. You know, when I receive inks from friends, I will usually swatch them in here as well. And here's an example of some notes that I took when I was talking with our pet insurance company. So this is something that I will want to reference, especially next year when we renew. More ink swatches. Here I'm running down the Canada Post letter mail rates because I think I was preparing for NaNoWriMo. I will put recipes. So I was at my sister's and she was telling me how she makes her turkey chili, and I just wrote it down really quickly. So, you know, I'm not going to have my meal planner with me all the time, but I am going to have this on me all the time. So this is the perfect amount of space for something like that. Another currently inked. And Yeah, and here I have some notes for a Japan vlog that I was working on. I think this was my Tokyo haul video. Ink list for the ink swap that I did with Tiffany from Toxmot. This was a giant swatch, accidental. I don't think I meant to put this much ink on the page, of Tatcha Suchi, which is this beautiful brown. It looks funny here because I wrote this with my Kakimori brass nib. But then I put it in one of my pens and it's just a stunning color. So actually looking at this is making me want to ink another pen with this color because I think it's so beautiful. Here's just some notes for the couch that we bought. And I was asking questions about the return policy, the warranty, delivery fee, that kind of thing. Some notes on Coconut's test results for some tests that we did. This was Tiffany's currently inked because when we got together, we brought some of our pens for each other to try. So this was really fun to try some different pens from my collection. Some more pen thoughts. Blank pages. Sometimes I'll go back and I will write in these if I need some more space. And if I don't end up using it, that's okay too. And you can see here, like on these days, I remember I had pretty big tasks that took up a lot of time, but they weren't, so I didn't have so many little tasks. I just had like bigger tasks to do. And so I really didn't, I remember at this point, I didn't really make use of this that much because my day would be, I would kind of write down what I needed to do and then I would just work on it all day. So sometimes this is all the space that I need. Some ink samples that I got from Tiffany. Currently inked. Playing with my Benu Euphoria 1.1 stub. This is when I had inked it up with Konpeki. And sometimes like here, I was conducting interviews and I just wrote down a rough outline of timing for how much I wanted to spend on each topic. And again, there are some days where I'm really just getting my to-do list out so I know what I need to focus on and then getting straight to work. This is a market that Helena from Tiny Tiger Co. told me about, or she mentioned in one of her videos or in a comment of one of her videos, and I wrote it down to remind myself if I'm ever in Japan again to check out this outdoor market in Tokyo. Some notes on my Teddy Blake collaboration video. A wish list from Galen from Fountain Pendulum. This was from my Benu collaboration. So some notes that I put together on the two pens that I was talking about. And this was me playing around with the idea of moving my meal planner information into this book and potentially removing this from my lineup. Ink samples for Moonlit Journal. These are some ink samples that I received from Galen from Fountain Pendulum. I'm still working my way through these purples. Here I was playing around with some of my little stamps. What do you call them? The little like punch stamps. And I was thinking about recording books that I'm reading or TV shows or movies that I'm watching. And that lasted 2 days. So I did not do that. Okay. Here's a to-do list for a video to keep me on track. And you can see there's some blank pages here. Some more currently inked. Yeah, lots of blank space, which is fine because at the end of the day, this is really, sometimes all I need is just a place to put my to-do list so I can kind of get it out of my head. It's one of my favorite inks of all time. Sailor Tokiwa Matsu. Beautiful, beautiful ink. Another recipe. Some more notes on a video. This is one of the days where I just had a really long to-do list, so this is an example of when I just need more space sometimes. This was from a pen that Wendy Sue gave me that was writing quite dry, so she gave me a little tutorial of how to make the pen wetter by basically pushing really hard on the nib, and it's definitely writes a lot wetter than it did before. So I was worried I went too far, but it's quite an enjoyable pen to write with now, and it's a cool nib, so I'm going to do a little more testing with it, but if you're curious about it, I can tell you about it in a future video. It's the pen, I think it's called the pen BBS or something. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. I can't remember what it's called. Just more notes, ink thoughts. And these were some of the beautiful ink samples that Danielle from my Dandelion Diaries sent me. I still haven't had a chance. Oh, I've recently inked up my Pilot Custom A23 with this Sion Gyo, and it's gorgeous. I love it. And I'm actually really excited to try maybe this Here Kitty Kitty, which is a shimmer ink. I'm thinking about potentially putting this in my Benu Euphoria next, because that stub nib handles shimmer ink so well, and I just want to try all my shimmer inks in it. I'm really loving it. Shopping list for some paint for the office makeover project. And this is just an example of taking a page that was previously blank and making messy notes based on a meeting that I had at the time. Ink sample list for my friend Helena. Another day where I had quite a long to-do list. Some notes on my first artist day. Another day with a pretty long to-do list. Yeah, these days were on the busier side. Blank pages. This is another one of the ink samples from that ink vent that I was excited to try. And I put it in my Pilot parallel nib that I put in a one kai, I think that's how you pronounce it. I learned about this exact setup from Simone, and I love it because this is the entire ink sample, and I wanted to see if I'd be able to get some of that beautiful sheen on when writing with this, and I just love this color. This is Nagasaki BK ink Lantern Vermilion, and as you can see, I hope you can see, there's this beautiful sheen that comes out, and this probably wouldn't come out in a regular pen. So I just love using this parallel for thicker writing, and I just love how it makes the ink, it brings out all the beautiful qualities of the ink. And that's the end of my Hobonichi, or my A6. So I don't really have anything in the notes page to have like a pen test. I haven't done anything with these note pages. I haven't needed them. I haven't used any of these pages in the back, which feels kind of like a little bit of a waste. Maybe at some point I'll use them. Also haven't used the My 100 list. So if you have any suggestions, let me know. Yeah, I feel like there's at least one year I would love to actually use these pages because I love that they put this effort into it. I think it adds to the quirk and the personality of the Hobonichis, but I don't know. It's just, this is really what I use this book for. So yeah, I mean, like I said, sometimes I feel like it's a little boring being in this book, but from a productivity standpoint, from a practicality standpoint, it really checks all my boxes. I love how flat this is. And this looks a little chunky right now because I've put all of these like post-its and things in on the pages just to cover stuff up. But normally when I don't have those there, it's quite slim. So these two together work really well as my planner. Obviously, if I wanted to do journaling in here as well, I don't think it would be enough space, but it's really just for planning, and I think it works out really well. I just really love having the pre-dated pages. I think that's really important for me, and you know, even this past week, I knew I had coconuts, flea and tick medication coming up, and I had it in here, but as I planned out this week, I was also able to write it here. So by the time I got to Tuesday, I could see it right there, and we were able to give him his medication. Whereas we would always forget, like we would put in our shared digital calendar all the dates ahead when we needed to do this. And 9 times out of 10, I would forget because I get so many notifications throughout the day that it's like I suddenly become blind to them. So I find that if you're, you know, for me, because I'm so forgetful, this type of stuff really sets me up for success. So I can't say enough good things about having a pre-dated system and just having like this space to do my to-do list, but also having this extra space for like brain dumps or anything that I need to do. And I love that this fits in my purse so much. Maybe next I'll talk about this meal planner. This is my 3rd year of having a meal planner. And it is quite satisfying to flip through even my old ones because I had put so many different things in there, including recipes and things like that. And from a kind of like historical context, I find it interesting to see what we were eating, what we were planning. But sometimes I think, wouldn't it make more sense to just have everything in one book? And the reason why I had meal planning in a separate book for so long was because it used to be this big challenge for me. And now it's kind of like second nature. It's not a problem. It just happens now. And I think I talked earlier in this year about thinking about dropping this book because I felt like it almost sometimes feels like overkill. But on the other hand, I don't really want to stop doing something while it's working, because I don't really want meal planning to become chaotic again. It's just not something I want to spend my energy worrying about. So that was a long ramble. Let's get into it. Don't do anything with this page. For the calendar, I'm just noting down where we're buying our food and how much we're spending. And I will do a very minimal amount of decorating, nothing too crazy. Okay, and then for the weekly pages, this hasn't really changed, honestly, but I've just been having more fun with it because when I was getting bored earlier this year, I decided to stay with it. And something that I've been trying to do to make it kind of more interesting is to just like go nuts pasting things in and just slapping stickers everywhere and kind of using all of my cute little food stickers. So I've been putting in like fruits and vegetable stickers that I've been collecting, and I got this idea from Chris from Terrible Hime, and I've just been slapping them wherever. So what I'll do is I'll plan my week, and then after the fact, throughout that week, I will, put stickers and things in any empty spaces. I do meal planning in 2-week sprints. So the first week I will do, I will write down like what we already have to start with so we don't duplicate. Throughout the week, I'll also put meal ideas that we're maybe craving so that by the time I'm sitting down to meal plan, I already have a list to start with. And then on the second week of the sprint, I will put the shopping list over here. And then the bottom here is just an ongoing work in progress, but I've kind of been experimenting with putting chores here. In an ideal world, this is a proactive list where I look at all the chores I need to do for that week and write them down. And then I use that Alistair method to, note down when it happens, just so that I have a place to keep track of that stuff. In reality, it's a place where I put down a chore that I did when I remember to record it. And sometimes I forget to put it. So I don't think the system is quite working. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that I'm not necessarily in this book every single day, as opposed to something like this where I'm just in it every day and I'm looking through it all the time. Mostly I come in here to do my planning, and then I'll reference it at the beginning of the week to remember what we had planned for the meals. But I'm not really in here, marking down the chores. So I don't know if this is the best place for it, but we just had room. It kind of made sense, meal planning home chores. So that's what I've been doing. But all of this other stuff is just working out great. I'm really loving how that's working out. And I've just been adding some more photos of the food that we make because I always take photos of my food for some reason. This is something that I've been doing since before I was even online. Like from the moment I had a digital camera, I was taking photos of my food. So I figured I might as well do something with all these photos I'm taking. So this is an example. Like this is the corn chowder, which was a recipe that a viewer shared with me, and it's such a delicious soup. So I put a photo of it to remember it. And I've also been having fun using a lot of my like food related washi tape and stickers. And also whenever I have stickers from fruit and veg. Here's a delicious pizza that Mike made. Here's that delicious miso soup. That was another recipe that a viewer shared, and I love this soup so much. This was such a comfort meal throughout the winter. This is when we planted our seeds for eggplant, green peppers, and red peppers. So this was kind of a cool way to remember like what was where. And these are some of my favorite mochi donuts that you can get from this place called Isabella's. They're so delicious. This was a quiche that I made. I think this is one of our first barbecues of the year. This is a delicious meal that my mom made. So that's this section. And then I don't think I showed you this last time, or maybe I did. I've also been recording TV shows and movies that Mike and I have been watching together. And I've been kind of using this space because this is a week's mega and I had the room. I've been recording down the movies and the TV shows that we're watching. And I got this idea of a layout from Himawari Stationery. I love how she formatted things. She drew a little representation of whatever media she was consuming. I decided to just print the movie poster because I think that will help jog my memory if I'm ever wanting to go back and remember what we watched. And I really like how this has turned out. So I will, so I'll write down the date, the rating on IMDb, the time, the director, the first 3 actors that show up on IMDb, the IMDb rating, my rating, my partner's rating. I'll copy out the synopsis from IMDb because I just feel like we do consume a lot of media, which is something to think about. But I like just having a reminder to help me remember like what it was about, because in previous years I would log just the name of the media, but I would kind of forget everything else about it. So I think if I can remember a little bit about the actors or what it was about, that will really help me remember things a bit better. And then just so that I don't get bogged down by trying to do like a really formal review, I'll usually just have a conversation with my partner and we'll each come up with 1 or 2 sentences about the media, and that's enough for me. I don't really want to do full-blown reviews because I consume media very much so as kind of an escape. I sit with very heavy stories as part of my job. And a way that I practice self-care is consuming more lighthearted media. So I tend to choose things that are kind of lighter, if that makes sense, or not too close to reality, just because I need that separation and I find that I need that break. So I'd be curious what type of media you like to consume, because I think what we consume can really have an impact on our well-being if we're not careful. So yeah, we usually watch 1 movie a weekend, so it kind of adds up pretty quickly. And throughout the week, we'll maybe work on a couple of shows. So that's been going really well. And I actually really like the format of doing it doing these little mini reviews in the Hobonichi weeks, thinking ahead to 2026, because of course I'm already thinking about 2026. I'm not sure if I will have a Hobonichi weeks. I find myself really wanting to simplify my planner stack, but there's something about the Hobonichi weeks that keeps pulling me back in. So I'm just going to continue this year and then we'll see how it goes. I'm curious if I've allotted enough space for the whole year. I guess we'll see. And then over in this section, this is how I used the back note pages for my meal planners in previous years. I will just copy down receipts and recipes that I want to use. And again, I know for some this is going to feel really repetitive, but I find it very interesting to see where we're spending our money, to see what we're buying, and also to note, like to be able to see like how much things are costing. Because if I'm at one grocery store and then I'm at another grocery store the next week, I can actually look here and refer to some of our staple items and be able to tell if it's more expensive or not. Yeah, that's basically the end. Okay, and then here I just have my 100 list favorite recipes. I have meal ideas for each season of the year, and if I'm really feeling stuck for recipe ideas, this is where I will reference. And that's it. That's my meal planner. So it's kind of a mix of things between being like a meal planner and a movie review. I know it maybe doesn't make sense, but because this was the mega, I figured this was the book to test that out in. Honestly, if this had come in a week's mega, I probably would have put the movies and TV shows in here as well. But I really wanted to use this beautiful cover as my health and wellness. And books I keep in here because I read those on my own, but most of the media, like the TV shows and the movies, I do watch with my partner. And since this book tends to live in our living room / kitchen, it kind of made sense to me to leave this where we're consuming the media because it's easy for me to pull this out and record it. So that was kind of my reasoning for separating out the different types of media. We're on to the last book for this video. This is my health and wellness tracker. Self-care is very important to me. Just making sure that I build in moments to recharge and restore my energy levels. I have this kind of as a way to keep myself accountable. By no means does this need to be in a separate book. I think you can do this type of health tracking or whatever works for you to ensure that you're building in little moments into your day to recharge. I just have it in a separate book because I like thinking about it as like almost a project, just so that I never deprioritize how important it is. It is an ethical obligation as part of my role. So I take it very seriously, and if I am not taking care of myself, then I can't take care of others. So for now, it's in a separate book. I will be honest, I am thinking about what it might look like if I integrated it into maybe some other books, only because I am finding myself wanting to simplify a little bit, but I'm going to stick with this for this year because I'm not finding it too hard to keep up with. Simply because I haven't really changed it. So in here, I have whatever ink I have inked up in my pen that I use for the month. I dedicated a different purple ink to each month just because I found myself at the start of the year with a lot of purple ink. It's a purple book and I thought it'd be fun to have purple inks. So this month I have Sailor Ink Studio 224, which kind of almost looks like a blue. So maybe it's more like a blurple, but I love this ink. On this annual calendar page, I am using it to track my steps and my runs and my strength workouts. So I write down I'll write down my steps in the box, and then I will color in the day if I went for a run. And I'll color in the day green if I did a strength training workout. And then up here, I will just record the high of the day, like whatever day I had the most steps, the low, and the average. I'm going to skip the monthlies, but basically for the monthly, this is where I note down whoever I'm spending time with, because as part of the relational aspect of self-care, leaning into your support network is really important. And it takes effort for me to connect with others. Not because I don't like to, but sometimes I think my natural default is to be quite introverted, and it's really easy for me to spend time on my own. So, but at the same time, when I'm not doing so well, I tend to withdraw and isolate myself. And so this is a way for me to keep an eye on how often I'm leaning into my support network. And if I notice that I'm not seeing too many people, that's a sign that I want to make a bit more effort the following month. So again, this is just a way for me to remind myself, because this might come naturally to other people, especially if you're extroverted, but it takes effort for me, and that's why I like putting it down on paper. As for the weekly layout, this has not changed really at all. So on the far left column of the weekly spread, I always note down the weather. I have added a few more things that I'm tracking, but basically it's the weather and it's the high and the low of the day. Over in this column, the two columns still on the right hand side of the page, I will note down my meals. I don't know, I find a comfort to noting this down. I'm not tracking calories or anything like that, but it must be the researcher in me. I find it really interesting to have this information. And this is the kind of thing that I would be interested in looking back on someday, just to see some of these details. I don't know. I like it. So I like that I'm kind of tracking it now. And then on this side, I have notes, any additional notes that I want to add. And then I have a few of my different habit trackers, things that I want to keep track of, things that I am also tracking, like my mood, anxiety, energy levels, and then I track symptoms. So my big focus this year is to get my skin under control. And so I've been tracking some of my symptoms throughout the year, just because I hope that I can see a change, even if it's minute, even if it looks the same. 70% of the time, I just want to see an overall trend of things getting better. And then I always leave a space in the bottom corner for extra notes if I feel like I need to add context to my week. That's how that's how these weeks have been going. There's not really a lot of emotion to this. At this point, it's kind of like a part of my routine. I will just go in here and fill out the information. I added in sunrise and sunset because, especially in the winter when the days are so short, it was really motivating to see that the sun was rising earlier and earlier each day. And this was an idea from Katie's Craft Studio. I think it's probably going to start getting a little sad when the days get shorter. So I wonder how I'll feel when I'm tracking that. But yeah, I just find it really helpful. Like, again, it's not like I'm the most excited about updating this book, but I just find that having this historical data is so helpful for me. Struggling with something like my eczema, where it's never going to be cured. It's just, hopefully I'll manage it to a point where it's not preventing me from functioning. Seeing these little moments of it getting better, even if it feels like it's not, I have objective, at least from my perspective, I have something that I can refer to say, well, it did get better. It didn't feel like it at the time, but there were pockets where there were moments when it did. So I like to have this to refer to, especially if down the road I'm going through the same issues. I also have a roadmap of what I did to improve it. I noted down creams I tried, medications I tried, how long I tried them for, how I felt through them. And I also have all these different ways that I could reanalyze things. Like if I had a pocket of a flare up here, I can also look at what else was going on in my life. I can look at notes. I can, refer to here, and that will really help me understand what is really impacting me at that time, so I could maybe make some changes in the future. So I find this so valuable. I question whether I need a separate hobinichi for it. I think you could do this type of tracking in other books. I think I just liked the idea of having this separate book because this cover was so cute, and I liked the idea of compartmentalizing this. But having said that, I don't think it's always necessary to compartmentalize everything. Okay, so that brings us to this week. I also always have a feelings wheel attached to here because if I'm trying to ask myself how I'm feeling, I like just having some extra vocabulary in case I need a little help deciding. So that's what I use kind of as like a blotter as well. And then for the notes pages, I'm going to skip these, but I always have one page dedicated to like a monthly recap. And I have 5 things that are my highlights, basically. And then on this side, I will put every event that I think is noteworthy, whether it's a happy event or maybe an unhappy event. And then down here, I will note down all the people that I connected with. And it's just another way for me to kind of see like where am I spending my time, who am I spending that time with, and also like is there someone that I haven't connected with in a while. So I find it really helpful just as a kind of reflection tool for myself. And then here I have my year at a glance dashboards. These have been somewhat helpful. I find they're more helpful as like when I'm looking back. I still haven't figured out what I'm going to do down here, so just ignore that. But basically, from my weekly pages, I'm taking some of the data that I put here, and I'm putting them into these 3 dashboards. One is dedicated to anxiety levels, one is dedicated to sleep, and one is dedicated to skin. And that's because these are the 3 issues that I really want to stay on top of. So I do struggle with anxiety, and I like to just note when it's getting out of control, because then there might be a need to intervene in some way. And so I've kind of set it up so that when I'm rating my own anxiety, anything that's an 8 or higher, I would consider needs attention, because that means my anxiety is at a very high level. If it's between 5 and 7, then it's like moderate, so just monitor it. And then if it's below 4, then it's good, because I don't think there's really ever a situation where I have 0 anxiety. And so, yeah, you can see at a quick glance sections that I've had like more anxious days. And then anything with a square is an event that I thought was noteworthy. So I will put a square around it, and then I will write down what was happening at that time, just in case that kind of provides more context as to like what was going on at the time. I take the same approach for sleep. So I was struggling with major insomnia most of last year and at the beginning of this year. And so I really wanted to get my sleep back on track. And to do that, I started tracking it. So, yeah, anything it's the same kind of color coding system. Anything that's a big colored dot needs attention. So that's if I was getting less than 4 hours of sleep that night. 5 to 6 is like monitor. And then anything 7 hours or more is like you're doing well. And you can see here, like, actually things improved a lot. So in January, things were still quite bad. They improved quite a lot in February and March. And then I had this weird period in April where I had a string of really bad nights. So I didn't actually write down any events here. I wonder. Yeah, it looks like I actually wrote down some events on the skin issues page. And I think that's just because I'm pretty sure most of my issues are related to skin issues. Yeah, and you can even see here, like, there's a lot of overlap from when I had sleep issues and skin issues. And that's actually the intention of these graphs down here. Is I wanted to be able to kind of show some of that comparison. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So maybe by the next flip through, I will have figured this out. But yeah, over here, same thing. If I had a really bad flare up, that's the color dot. Things started to look like they were healing. It would be moderate or, doing better. And then someday I would love to have a whole row of these little dots because that kind of shows like recovering or maintenance. And you can see like it's gotten a lot better. So January was really bad. March was also particularly bad. The beginning of April was horrid. I had a really tough time at the beginning of April. And then I started some new medication around this date, this square. And I remember they said it would take about 2 weeks for this medication to start kicking in. And you can see just by this chart, around 2 weeks in, things actually started to get better. And, knock on wood, things have been much better since. So this is the kind of thing that really motivates me, because while the beginning of the year was quite stressful and not very good, I can see, like, I can look back and I can see when things started to get better. So this kind of thing really gives me hope that even the smallest change is worth noting, because eventually you'll see a pattern of hopefully more good than bad. So I really love this year at a glance. I also have a friend log, which I won't show, but basically I just note down the friend that I see and what we did. And then here I have the books that I've read for this year. And I have this really cute little star stamp. So I've been kind of rating the books as I finish them. And here I got this idea from Journaling with Maddie, I think is the name. And she printed out the covers of her books and put them on her weeks. And I can't remember if she also added in like how much each of them cost, because these are all books that I got from Libby, like I borrowed from the library. And if I'm not mistaken, she would write down how much it would have cost so she could see how much money she saved by reading books from the library. So I love that. But I also just honestly love having the visual representation of the books that I read. I'm in the middle of reading the Throne of Glass series, but the rest of the series, I'm still waiting to receive them from the library. So there's a downside to borrowing. You have to wait for the book to be available, but then I just discover other books in the meantime. And yeah, I really love this. So my phone just died. So I'm not sure where I left off, but I think I was talking about this page. I've left a few pages. I'm not sure how many books I'm going to read this year, but I've left some pages so that I can keep creating pages like that. And honestly, if I had more space in the back, I probably would have liked to have done a similar layout to my media. So something similar to the way I was approaching these little reviews. I think it would also be kind of cool to do little mini reviews of these books, but I just didn't have enough room to do that. So for now, I'm just using it as an overview, but I might consider a book journal, or I might consider maybe if I do a Hobonichi Weeks Mega next year, I could put my books and all my media back in one book. That could be one option. Or I could maybe dedicate a traveler's notebook insert to it, because I certainly have enough traveler's notebooks that I'm always looking for ideas. Or I could dedicate a separate notebook altogether for book reviews or media consumption. I really haven't decided. I've never really been one to log my media consumption until this year. Like, I used to write down what I read that year, but I've never taken it a step farther, like, downloading the covers or adding little notes. I think what I'm doing this year is working fine, because I don't really want to create so much extra work for myself that I don't want to do this anymore. And I think for now, this approach is just enough that I'm still going to be able to look back one day and be able to see what I read that year. But I think if I committed to writing a review of all of these things, I would get overwhelmed, and I probably would fall behind, and then I just wouldn't do it. So I have time to figure out what I might do in a following year, but this is working well for me so far, so I'm pretty happy with this. And in the back here, I just have some notes from when I was at various doctor's appointments and different medications that I was using and what was in them. I also have my allergy test results, because I did an allergy test earlier this year, and I printed out the results and put it in the back. And then in the very back, I'm also using the 365 days checkoff sheet to keep track of how many letters I'm sending out this year. So, and then on this page, I've covered it up, but these are my doctors and pharmacy information, because often when I go to the doctor, they will want to know which pharmacy to send medication to. So I always have that information handy so I can share it with them. And then I also have, like my regular doctor and my dermatologist and my allergist, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm using this address section for. And that's it. Okay, we did it. So, no surprise. That was a long one. The theme of my planners and tracker this year is predictable, boring, functional, messy, and working. So sometimes I think it would be really nice to switch things up. I'm always fantasizing about consolidating things so that I'm only in one book. And with One Book July coming up, I am considering doing an experiment, just because I think it would be good to just experiment and kind of scratch that itch and see if maybe a one book system would work for me. But then I constantly go back to my jobs to be done, decision framework, and I remember all the reasons why I decided to, go with this system in the first place. It feels like a lot sometimes, but this lives in one area of the home and gets accessed when it needs to be. And then these two are really, on my desk, and this takes about 5 minutes a day to complete. And then this is just a very passive space for me to refer to throughout the day. I didn't talk about my cousin, and I'm not going to talk about that today, but I still use it. I've just come to realize that this year it has really turned into like a glorified notebook. So unless I use it for more than just taking long form notes, I'm not sure that I'm really using it to its full potential. So that's something I need to think about for next year, because I have quite a soft spot for the cousin. It was the first Hobonichi book that I used, and it really changed my life at the time, and it brought so much joy into planning in general, which for me, not only did it kind of keep me, like help me stay more on track of things and helped with my accountability, but it was also fun and I really loved using it. So it's kind of funny that it's like my least used book right now. So anyway, those are just some thoughts. I think boring is actually good. And I've been kind of experimenting with other ways to stay engaged with some of these books. And who knows, with July coming up, maybe I'll be doing some experiments, or maybe I'll just stay on course and figure all of this out, and procrastinate on making decisions and think about it more at the end of the year. I'd love to know, how are things going for you at this point in the year? What systems are you in? Are you thinking about making any changes? What's working well? What's working less well? I'd love to have a conversation about planners and journals with you in the comments. Love to hear from you. And if you're still here, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Bye.